Gagala tayo.
And what was interesting,
Gagala tayo ng chile.
Kaplan, who is also one of the consulting physicians here at Meridian Valley Lab. Dr. Kaplan has graduated from Bastyr University. He's been in private practice both before he came to Meridian Valley Lab and also working here with the Tahoma Clinic, Dr. Wright's clinic, and is now full-time in the lab as a consulting physician. And he's done a lot of looking into this whole topic of oxytocin and actually has much more information than he's able to share with you today. But it's going to be a good webinar, so I'm just going to turn this over to Dr. Kaplan right now.
thank you very much, Dr. Larson. Really pleasure to be with you again. I really enjoyed producing and delivering these webinars, and we do have an exciting topic today, and hopefully keep this more or less to about 30 minutes to respect your busy work days. So without further ado, let's get started, and I will go ahead and hold questions till the end. Okay, so today we're going to briefly review oxytocins, and of course we have a number of blogs and articles that published in the mainstream news media, if you will. Can oxytocin get me a boyfriend? Be mine forever. Oxytocin may help build long-lasting love. So definitely very much, it's easy to write about. It's easy. It's an attention-getting subject. But moving past the hype, what does the science have to say about oxytocin? So as brief review, oxytocin is manufactured in the hypothalamus, and it's released via the posterior pituitary. Also, from a mental emotional point of view, diminishes anxiety and fear, and we'll touch on that very briefly a little later on. There's also a positive feedback cycle around wound healing that unfortunately is going to be outside the bounds of what we talk about today. So I'd like to just give recognition and credit to Dr. Jorge Flechas, who really introduced oxytocin to the world of functional medicine. He had has present tense, very busy practice focusing on fibromyalgia. And he became aware of the pain mitigating aspects of oxytocin when one of his patients reported that she experienced a lot of pain relief during orgasm. And at that point, Dr. Flechas researched what might be going on within the biochemistry of human orgasm and realized that oxytocin may be valuable for pain management. And that's really sort of how we came to learn about oxytocin outside of the traditional pregnancy and lactation, childbirth kind of point of view. So at the same time, we have a few human observation studies in what I'm calling the early years of the 80s, and it came to be known that oxytocin does increase significantly around the time of orgasm in both men and women, and does stay elevated for a brief time after that. One of the reasons for that is a very short half-life, which will inform our testing strategy. We'll talk about it a little bit later. In a slightly later study, they were able to quantify the amount of oxytocin in both the penile blood, the corpus cavernosum, and peripheral blood, cubital vein. And you see here that oxytocin rises step by step by step according to the stages of erection.
هلا ناصر.
اهلا اخبارك؟
هلا حبيبي شو اخبارك؟ شلونك؟
الحمد لله كيف الامور؟
ايش فيكم بتبين تلفزيون؟ قال لي
ما ادري فجاه وانت قال لي اقول جبت عبد الله مو اللي قال
أنا-
قال يا رجال ما جاب شيء ما جاب شيء قال لي ست ادري 12 لا ما ادري كم عدد
12 بلقه كل واحد ثلاثه قلت جبت معاه ذوره قلت يكفي ما ادري
هو ما يكفي ما ادري
اي يعني واحد يوم كلمني قال لي ليه ما سويت وكذا قمت قلت له تبي ارجع رجعت قال لي لا خلاص
اقول انا بجيب
Dopamine enhances oxytocin. Serotonin seems to inhibit oxytocin, which is going to be an important consideration when it comes to SSRI medications. I'll show you a slide on that. Peripherally, oxytocin seems to manage a lot of the contractility that we find in the reproductive tract. Also, we find that not only does Viagra improve blood flow to the penis through its inhibition of PDE5, it also turns out that we have reason to believe Viagra improves oxytocin, which may be a reason why, in fact, it works so well for some people. And it also might explain why it doesn't work for others. If we have a patient whose oxytocin levels are normal to begin with, we wouldn't expect improvement on that score. Now, this was not a human study. This was an animal model, an ex vivo study where they looked at rat pituitaries. There was a very strong response from Viagra upon stimulation, wherein oxytocin was generated. Okay, here are my references specifically for the mechanisms of action slide. And this webinar, by the way, will be available via free archive. You'll be able to watch, and that'll be archived in the next day or so. I mentioned SSRI medications. We know that there's a very, very well-established side effect with is delayed. Very, very strong effect in both humans and animals. In this particular study, they gave an animal study. They gave oxytocin to rats who were also taking Prozac, and they found that the ejaculation impairment went away. So very, very interesting application here for oxytocin. Emerge get oxytocin this time. So very, very important, I think, action to keep in mind as we think about helping people age healthfully and gracefully. If they're low in oxytocin, they may get a very significant benefit in terms of their muscle mass, which is also going to be important for bone health. And oxytocin plays a role in bone health in its own.
هلا عبد الله.
هلا أمي.
هلا لابوك. شلونك؟
طيبين.
أخبارك؟ الله يحفظك.
كل شيء تمام.
الحمد لله. رايح تشتري؟
هذاني في الطريق.
الله يحفظك. بس خلصوا على الباب لا تخلونه مفتوح، لا تدش الجيران. خذوك لا راح ثاني مع شغالة.
لا هذا الشغالة وياي
خلاص لا تعجل الأم. لا تعمل شيء. لا ما بس لا تخلي فيها الأم. تشوفون؟
اي نشوي ان شاء الله. بس نشوي بس.
ما قلت لك باب السور طلعوا الباب صار لا تدخل السور، ترى السور يزبط في ملك. لا نعرفك يا ولدي. عرفت؟ طلعوا دخلوا من برا الصالة وإذا خلصوا هم يتقدمون للحمامات تحت. خلي القسم
ان شاء الله. زين.
تسكن في الصالة وتنبهها هذا
Blunted cortisol response in the context of a stressor is not the same thing as depressing cortisol. So I think that this theoretical concern really is just that. It's theoretical and it may be overblown. There are no studies that I'm aware of that show that it depresses cortisol. From a psychological point of view, if a person receives too much oxytocin, they may develop sticky, quote-unquote, sticky dependent behavior. They may crave compliments, needing esteem or rewards from others in the context of a stressor is not the same thing as depressing cortisol. So I think that this theoretical concern really is just that. It's theoretical and it may be overblown. There are no studies that I'm aware of that show that it depresses cortisol. From a psychological point of view, if a person receives too much oxytocin, they may develop sticky, quote-unquote, sticky dependent behavior. They may crave
an addiction. I'm going to explain something for you right now, but hold the following words in mind as we are going to come back to it soon. Hormesis is the opposite of instant gratification / addictions. Okay, great. So take for example person A who has developed an addiction to alcohol. Well, first in his teens he probably got...
الو.
هلا قلبي.
هلا وسهلا. ها بشر في شيء؟
ها؟ لا والله.
ولا شيء.
لا.
ايش قالوا الرياض؟
لا الحين ما ردوا، محمد فيه هناك الحين قاعد.
وذليل نفس الشيء، الباطنية نفس الكلام.
باطنية ايه. قال لي ما اقدر اسوي شيء.
هم هذولين مو براضين يرسلون تروح المستشفى عن طريق هذا.
And those are what sucks up the dopamine and makes us feel the pleasure. And listen to this, if we often keep doing those activities, the dopamine levels are so high that the brain goes, now there's too much dopamine here. I need to protect myself. And it does so by killing off a few of those small receptors, the ones who make us feel the dopamine. Well, now we are left with our reward center with less dopamine receptors, and it can take weeks to months before they grow back. Less